What was it like growing up as a Polish American in the US?
I just thought my parents were like weirdos until I came to Poland as an adult and I was like, oh, okay, I see. It's because the whole country's like this.
I was one of the very only kids in my school who was eating like pasztetowe sandwiches.
So it was like countryside and churches and religion and prayers. Like that was Poland for us.
Do you connect more with your Polish or American side?
For a long time, I didn't realize how Polish I was.
I am smilier than like the average Polish person.
I remember when I was in middle school, I dreamed about living in Warsaw.
No, it's just tego. Like, so what? And that's how I imagine Poland.
Every Polish family has this one aunt in America, the mysterious one. No one really knows how she got there. One day, she was in Poland. Next day, she's in Chicago, sending us Hershey's chocolate for Christmas.
Well, we were not able to meet these aunts yet, but we met their kids who grew up in the US, and we asked them, what was it like growing up in the US in a Polish family?
Do they feel more Polish or more American?
And if you want us to come to US to make such videos, subscribe to the channel so that we can make that happen.
Let's get started.
Give me this fucking thing. Is that all right? Can they hear me with this?
Yeah, very
all right,
well.
So introduce myself. I'm David. I'm originally from Poland. I was born in Poland and I left to the US when I was like 5 years old. I grew up in the US. Now I have a YouTube channel where I talk about, in Polish, cultural differences between Poland and the US.
I just realized I've never done this in English. Like I've never introduced. Okay, my name is Kasia Myczynski. I have a channel in Polish called 15 na pół. It's about life in the United States, but not only, also Japan. Born and raised in the United States. Moved out when I was 22.
Hi, first of all, I'm not Sonik the Polish singer. My name is Monica Zielinski. I'm from Connecticut, USA, and I moved to Warsaw in 2016. I started my TikTok around the pandemic, and it was just a fun way for me to be creative and talk about my experiences as a Polish American in Poland.
What was it like growing up as a Polish American in the US?
I grew up in a neighborhood of immigrants. Like I had 2 American friends in my class. Everyone else was immigrant kids. I thought that's what the whole United States was like. I think it was more of a shock for me to go to college and have like these American friends like in the movies. And I was just like, wow, there's like Jessicas everywhere and Amandas. And I grew up with like Kasias, Anyas, and Christinas. So for me, it was really, really natural because of where I lived.
Was your childhood different from American kids?
Only now as an adult am I like learning about those differences. I mean, I definitely knew that like the American kids didn't eat meat and gelatin, right? That's not something that you do in America, but that's the thing that we did. My dad would like cook pig's feet and he's like, oh, you got to cook it for hours till it melts in your mouth. I was like, oh, I don't think meat should melt in your mouth. He's like, it's not meat, it's feet. And I was like, that is not convincing. One thing that I remember from my childhood, a situation with my dad, for a long time, I just thought my parents were like weirdos until I came to Poland as an adult. And I was like, oh, okay, I see. It's because the whole country's like this. I got it. But I remember we were like at an amusement park and we were waiting for a roller coaster. My dad had a t-shirt with a logo of an American football team. And my dad does not watch American football. I don't know why he had the shirt. We're waiting in line and there's like obviously an American because we're in America in front of us. An American looks, sees the shirt and he's like, hey, nice shirt. And he starts talking to my dad about the team for like 10 seconds, right? And he's like, yeah, it's a cool shirt. Like, they're doing really well this year. They got a new coach and blah, blah, blah. And my dad's just staring at him. And finally, the guy's like, hey, so are you a fan? And my dad was like, no. And that was it. And the guy was like, what the fuck? You didn't know what to do.
In my town of East Haven, Connecticut, I was one of the only kids that was Polish. Everyone else was like 2nd or 3rd generation Italian American, but they were very much American. So unlike a lot of Polish Americans you might run into who lived in maybe Chicago or where there was a dense population of Polish people, I didn't have that growing up. So I was one of the very only kids in my school who was eating like pasztetowe sandwiches or, my parents have a thick accent, but I leaned into that. I was very proud to be Polish. And I think a lot of my friends thought it was really cool that I was a child of immigrant parents. And again, I was just very proud. And that kind of made me who I am because I became more resilient and just tried to be myself.
Do you connect more with your American or Polish side?
It depends where I am. When I'm here, I kind of feel the like Americanness because you put it up against the contrast. And same thing in the States. When I'm in the States, I definitely feel like, okay, I'm not as American as I used to be.
How does this nationality mix show in your personality?
I'm like Polish, like work attitude. I don't know if it's the same in Poland, but it's definitely that way among Polish immigrants in the States. That is like definitely in my personality from the Polish side. And then I am smilier than like the average Polish person. When I used to come like 7 years ago, this has changed a lot. But 7 years ago, I found that people kept thinking I was flirting with them. And I was just like living.
Both, I guess. You gotta remember, I grew up in a Polish household, so all the cultural stuff was always Polish. And I think like for a long time, I didn't realize how Polish I was culturally. Because, when you're a teenager, you want to fit in. So when I was a teenager, I tried to be more American. I didn't want people to know I was Polish because you're like embarrassed about everything when you're younger. But when I got older and then I started actually spending more time outside of my house with Americans, I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, I don't do that. Or even the fact that like I count like a European, where it's like 1, 2, 3. Americans count like 1, 2, 3. It's weird.
I believe that I'm definitely more Polish than American. Even when I lived in the United States as a child, I identified more with my Polish side. And now living in Poland, I have definitely integrated into society fully.
And speaking of your personality, what part of your personality feels Polish and what part feels American?
As an American, I can be a little loud. I am trying to work on that and be more demure and mindful, especially in public. But as a Polish person, I love to be curious about the rest of the world and I love to travel a lot.
Do you mix your celebrations here? For example, celebrating 4th of July with pierogi.
I could speak for Polish people in America, right? I don't think they're going to have pierogi for 4th of July. Of course, you're going to celebrate 4th of July because you live in the U.S. And that's the difference between like immigrants in the U.S. and immigrants in Europe. Because like if you're an immigrant in the U.S., you want to be American. Like, you want your kids to be American. But, like, I've never heard of, like, immigrants in Germany. They're like, yeah, I want to become German. Or immigrants in England, like, that's our dream. My kids are true English people. Like, I've never heard that. So that's a big difference. In the U.S., I think people are very proud. America and, like, patriotism. Your kids speak English and you're, like, a proud American, even though you don't speak English. Oh, you'd have, like, kielbasa, right? You go to a Polish store, buy some real kielbasa. I never understood when I was younger, like, why all of my American friends, like, couldn't wait for Thanksgiving. They're like, oh, Thanksgiving's so good. I love Thanksgiving. The leftovers. They loved it, right? And I was like, why? Thanksgiving sucks. Because we'd always have just like bigos or something. My parents had no idea what they were doing. They're like, they eat turkey. So they made like a turkey terribly because Polish people don't make turkeys. So it was a terrible dry turkey and then Polish food, gołąbki or something with a turkey. That was our Thanksgiving. And then it wasn't until I was like an adult that I went to like an American Thanksgiving and I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been missing all these years. This is delicious.
I grew up in this neighborhood of immigrants, but the largest population was Polish. I could go to the grocery store and speak Polish. I could go to the bank and speak Polish. I don't think there is one cookie cutter American. Like, I guess the Chicago Americans, I didn't have much interaction with that because of the just immigrant community. So I, for example, don't know like what Americans did for Christmas. I know what Italians did and I know what the Polish people did, but I don't know what Americans did for Christmas.
My mom very much tried to stay true to Polish culture. So pierogi and also Wigilia was always traditional. So the other holidays we kind of integrated into our family, like Thanksgiving, for example, was American style, but Christmas Eve, Wigilia was always very traditional, as well as Easter. Those were the two holidays that my mom made sure that we were eating traditional Polish food on those holidays, even in the United States.
What do you miss most about the USA?
I miss celebrating Thanksgiving Day. It was one of my favorite holidays growing up.
And you don't celebrate that today in Poland?
I actually do celebrate Thanksgiving in Poland as best as I can because I think it's so great that at least once a year you can really think about what you have. Now there's so much consumerism and this kind of race to have more and bigger and make more money and have more physical things. And I think it's great to at least one day a year celebrate everything that we have and just be grateful.
As you had most of your life growing up in the US, how did you imagine Poland as a kid?
I didn't really have a picture of what Poland would be like. Back in 1995, Poland did not look so good, I'll tell you that. It looked pretty bad, especially where my grandpa lived. So small town, everything was gray. Like, it's just those gray blocky, like the block apartments. Those were different times, I'll tell you. I remember like just kids sitting in front of like corner stores, 13-year-old kids drinking beer and smoking cigarettes. And I was like, what? Is this normal?
And how has it changed?
Well, it's more colorful. I remember coming back in 2008 and being like, whoa, they painted the blocky.
I knew Poland through the lens of my parents. This was a very common thing among the Polish community that I grew up with. So it was like countryside and churches and religion and prayers. Like, that was Poland for us. When I started coming alone as an adult, it was a shock for me to realize that there's like this whole city life that's not that different from other European cities.
And has your perception of Poland compared to when you were a child different?
Yeah, it's extremely different. Poland was this thing that you would do as a kid every other year. And then there was like discovering Poland. That was eye-opening. I remember coming when I was like 25, 26, and hanging out with people that I met from YouTube and just being like, oh, they're like so much like me, which was totally different than what I thought growing up.
So the more you grew up, the more you connect with Poland, the Polish side of your identity.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think my parents had the best intentions, but they did themselves a disservice in what they were trying to do by presenting us only this one side.
I visited Poland almost every other year because my grandparents lived here. So I spent a lot of summers here and I loved it. I loved being with my cousins, and also it helped with my Polish language, and it made me kind of lose this accent that I maybe had. It just made me feel like this was my second home.
And what was the impression of Poland like that time?
As a child, I mainly stayed in Ostrołęka, which is where my mother is from. So it's a small town in Poland. But I did enjoy coming to Warsaw on some day trips or weekend trips, and I really enjoyed the city. I remember when I was in middle school, I dreamed about living in Warsaw. It was my biggest dream, and I never thought it would become a reality until I graduated college and decided to move here.
I'm sure a lot of Polish kids would had the opposite dream and seeing you coming here. Did you have that with your cousins or your friends when you came here as a child? And people thinking like, oh, wow, you're from the US. Like, you get all this cool stuff, which is not available in Poland at that time.
Maybe 15, 20 years ago, that was the case. But now people see that Europe is a really great place to live, especially for work-life balance. And there's a lot of opportunities here to travel and just have a good quality life. So I think that perspective has changed a lot. Now people, I think, understand why I decided to move to Europe rather than live in the US. Poland has changed so much since even 2016 when I moved here for the first time. If you just look at the skyline, it is evident that Warsaw is such a great up-and-coming city. And I actually lived in Western Europe for a year and a half. I lived in Luxembourg, and I would still rather live in Poland. There's just a lot of economic opportunity. There's so much growth here, and it's just evident also in the people who are coming here, and people's perspective of Poland has changed dramatically within the last 20 years.
What's it like being a Polish American in Poland?
So, I should probably say that I don't live in Poland. I spend just the summers in Poland. I came back to Poland. I was 22 years old. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I'm going to meet so many people and do small talk with everyone. So I went to Biedronka. I went to the cashier. It was an older lady. And I was like, hey, cześć, and the lady looked at me like she wanted to kill me. She was like, ugh. Took the candy bar and was like, boop. $3.25. She didn't even acknowledge me. I didn't realize at the time you can't say cześć to people you don't know. You have to say dzień dobry. Right? Otherwise, it's rude. Crazy when you think about it. I explain this to my American friends. I'm like, yeah, in Poland, it's rude to say hi to people you don't know. And they're like, whoa, why? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, that summer was a huge culture shock for me because you couldn't just go up to someone and be like, hey, how's it going? Because they'd be like, who the fuck is this guy? My sister, she ended up moving to Poland because she was going to school here. I came to visit her. And I told her that story about Biedronka. And then we were joking that I should have been a typical American Karen, where I was like, I want to talk to the manager. And we made up this whole scenario where I would have been like, hey, cześć. And then she'd be like, $3.25. And then I'd be like, excuse me, but I said cześć and I was nice and you didn't say anything. And then she would be like, yeah, so what? In Polish, she'd be like, no i co z tego? And then I talked to the manager. I'd be like, that lady was mean and she didn't smile and she didn't say hi to me. And the manager would be like, yeah, no i co z tego? So what? And I'd be like, oh, well, then I want to call the corporate number of Biedronka. And I'd call them and be like, hey, these people were rude at the store. They didn't want to help me and they weren't smiling and they didn't say hi. And then they would be like, no i co z tego? So what? And that's how I imagine Poland.
It's actually really interesting being a Polish American in Poland because my Polish is really good. I'm really fluent, but there's still a lot of things that I don't know. And people get confused because they think that I'm speaking fluently, so they assume that I'm Polish. But many times I don't understand something and they think I'm dumb. And I have to tell them my whole life story.
Do you have some kind of an accent?
For the most part, I don't have an accent, except for when I have to say an English word. I don't add a Polish ending to it. So a word like McDonald's, I say McDonald's. I don't say McDonalda. I have tried to make it Polish, but it kind of hurts me. My American side is hurt when I have to mispronounce an English word in Polish.
That actually makes sense because when I speak Polish words, I don't want to say Krakow. It doesn't make sense. So for Polish words, I would say Kraków.
Americans are more open right away, but Polish people are more hospitable and genuine later. I feel like the Americans have a good start, but then Poland, it's kind of like a slow progression upwards. I found that a lot of times when I was living here, there were some topics where I was just kind of seemed like this weird outlier because all of my Polish friends had the same kind of idea of how they would go about a situation or how they would treat a situation or what they think of the situation. And when I would present like, well, maybe, this person went through this and, let's not be so harsh. It'd be like, okay, you weird, always challenging us person. It's like, no, I mean, I'm just kind of weirded out that all of you think the same thing.
That's quite interesting how the diversity turns into diversity of ideas. What is the one thing that you take from the USA and give it to Poland?
Smiles. Approach a situation with a positive outlook, not like it's gonna fucking suck and you opened that door wrong on purpose to piss me off. Like I hate that part about Poland. Like you don't know when you're gonna come across someone who just is like ready to fucking give it to you.
I think Americans could teach Polish people how to be more self-confident. Polish kids could really use early on in life some classes on public speaking and just to be more confident and be able to project and speak their mind, because I think they have so much to share, but they don't have the confidence to do so. In America, kids are taught at an early age. We had something called show and tell. So even from kindergarten, we're taught how to speak in groups. And that's something that has taught me and carried me throughout life in various situations. And I think that would be a really great thing to have in Poland.
There's this famous Instagram channel that does interviews with kids. The kids in the US are so confident. I don't know where they get it from, age 3, age 4.
Well, that is true.
We're taught at a very early age on how to be able to speak up. And I think that's lacking still in Poland, which is unfortunate because Polish people are so smart and so funny, but sometimes they're not able to express those thoughts in a way that people will hear them.
What's the one thing that you would take from the US and give it to Poland?
Guns, so there'd be more school shootings.
Like, no, you can't have ice cream.
Just get rid of the problem. Maybe have like better interpersonal skills with people they don't know. That's one thing the U.S. is good at. People oftentimes criticize Americans for being stupid, and they are, okay? Don't forget it. It's true, but only in certain things, right? Americans are not good at math and science, but when it comes to like doing business or working with people or like selling something, I think Americans are really good at that.
And the flip side, what is something that you take from Poland and give it to the US?
Healthy food, accessible, healthy food. That's not like tomatoes that taste like tomatoes, not like cardboard.
I think Polish people could definitely teach Americans to be more humble and self-aware.
Going back to like the whole people skills thing, I think we need to like balance it out. This is my theory. In the US, when you are out in public and you're dealing with people, it is the default to be smiling, to be like, hey, what's up? Oh, hey, what's up, man? And just talking to people. That is the normal way of being. I think there's like a pressure to be that way. And because of that, sometimes some people maybe don't want to be that way, but they feel they have to be that way because of that pressure. And then you have these weird fake Americans. Polish people and Europeans judge Americans for being fake. I don't think Americans are fake for the most part. I think they sometimes are, and it's because of this pressure. A lot of people have this experience where you go to a restaurant and these waiters come and they're just like, hey, what's up, guys? And you could tell they hate their job, but they're like, oh, great choice, man. And you're like, ugh, get away from me, you fucking weirdo. Just be like, hey, what's up, guys? I'm Steve. I'm your waitress. What can I get you? Just be a normal person. But that's not typical. Whereas in Poland, the opposite is true, is that the default is like, just like, and like not smiling. And because of that, because the default is so neutral, some people are assholes. In Polish, you have the word hamstwo. Like some people are like chamy. Does that mean the majority of Americans are fake? No. Are some of them fake? Yes. Are the majority of Polish people like hamami, where they're just like rude assholes? No. But does it happen? Yeah. So I think if we could just balance that out somehow, that would be great.
Do you have family in the US?
Or maybe you're a Polish person living abroad.
Let us know your cultural observations in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe to Aliens in Poland.